The story of Sparta was written not only in battles, but in the quiet, steady years of preparation. The childhood of every Spartan was shaped by tradition, discipline, and sacrifice. From the moment of birth, their lives followed the same strict path. Boys molded into soldiers, girls strengthened to become the mothers of warriors. Together, they upheld the values of endurance, unity, and honor. The Agoge taught more than survival. It taught courage in the face of pain, loyalty to the city, and the quiet strength that defined Spartan pride. The hills of Laconia stood as silent witnesses. The Eurotas River flowed steadily, carrying with it the memories of generations raised under Spartan law. The rocky soil, the simple homes, the shared hardships, all left their mark on the people. Though the outside world changed, Sparta remained. Its people carried the same traditions, the same expectations, the same quiet strength. Fathers taught their sons to stand tall. Mothers reminded their children that duty came before comfort. The stories of ancient heroes echoed in every lesson. It was not an easy life, but it forged a legacy that outlasted empires. Even as the great city-states of Greece faded into history, the memory of Sparta endured. Today, we look back on that distant world. We remember the quiet determination of its people, the strength built not only in battle, but in the simplest moments of youth. Sparta's greatest warriors began as small children, shaped by hardship, bound by discipline, and guided by the pride of their homeland. And so, as the sun sets over the rugged hills, the spirit of Sparta remains, silent, enduring, unbreakable. The lessons of Sparta still echo through history: strength, sacrifice, unity. These were not only words, but a way of life, carried by every Spartan from their first steps. Even now, the ancient stones, the rivers, and the winds remember the quiet resilience of the people. Their names may fade, but their legacy endures. We drift now from those rugged hills. The fires of Sparta have cooled, but their spirit lingers in memory, in history, and in the timeless strength of those who once called it home. The streets may be quiet now. The voices of warriors, the sounds of training, all have faded with time, but in the stillness, their presence remains. We remember the children, molded by discipline, the families, bound by duty, the warriors, guided by honor. And as we let our minds drift gently from this ancient land, we carry with us the spirit of Sparta. The mountains still stand, the rivers still flow, and somewhere, beneath the surface of history, the lessons endure. Strength, pride, sacrifice. These echoes of Sparta whisper through time, reminding us that even in silence, true endurance never fades. And so, with quiet steps, we leave Sparta behind, its legacy carved into the hills, its memory resting in the winds. The story Spartan childhood was not filled with luxuries or comfort. It was simple, strict, and focused. Every day carried lessons in endurance. Every moment shaped their character. The youngest learned to obey, the older boys learned to command, girls learned to manage the household and care for the community. From a young age, they understood their place in the city's future. Stories of Spartan heroes were shared around fires and in homes. Tales of warriors who fought bravely, of women who raised strong sons. These stories were not just for inspiration, they were reminders of the expectations placed on every Spartan child. Strength was not optional, loyalty was not questioned, sacrifice was expected. Children were prepared for hardship, their food was plain, their clothes were few. They learned to live with little and to find pride in simplicity. The land around Sparta was rocky and dry, but the people were shaped to thrive in such harshness. They walked barefoot across stones, they trained their bodies to resist pain and discomfort. The Agoge ensured that by the time they reached adulthood, Spartan boys were ready to fight, to lead, and to defend their home. It also taught them that unity and obedience were as vital as strength. In the eyes of Sparta, a weak citizen weakened the whole city, but a strong, disciplined citizen became part of an unstoppable force. Girls were not ignored. Though they did not enter the Agoge, their training was also rigorous. Physical strength, mental sharpness, and pride were expected. Together, Spartan boys and girls built the foundation of the city. Their shared experiences, hardships, and pride connected them. They were more than individuals. They were Sparta. The expectations placed on Spartan youth were not meant to break them, but to prepare them. The city valued those who could endure. Spartans were taught to hide weakness, to speak with strength, and to act with honor. From early morning drills to evening lessons, their days were filled with purpose. Even in rest, they remained aware, disciplined, and connected to the needs of Sparta. The legacy of Sparta depended on this upbringing. Generations of warriors, mothers, and leaders were shaped in the same way, following the same strict code. Other cities wondered at Sparta's unity. Few understood that it began in childhood with every lesson, every hardship, every test of will. It was not the grand walls or riches that protected Sparta, but the people themselves. Hardened by discipline, bonded by sacrifice, they stood together, unyielding. For a Spartan, life was a constant journey of proving oneself worthy of the name. Childhood was only the beginning. Every sunrise over the hills of Sparta reminded them of their duty. The land was harsh, but it shaped them. The lessons were hard, but they prepared them. And so, from the smallest child to the oldest elder, the spirit of Sparta endured. In Sparta, the individual was never greater than the city. Every lesson taught to the young reflected this belief. Children were raised to understand that personal desires came second to the needs of the state. This idea was present in every part of life. From the way they trained to the way they spoke, Spartans lived with discipline and restraint. Even their language reflected their values. They were known for speaking briefly, with sharp, clear words. It was called laconism, the habit of saying much with few words. A Spartan's worth was measured not by wealth or status, but by strength, courage, and loyalty. The simplest farmer or soldier could hold more honor than a wealthy man from another city, as long as he served Sparta well. Spartan children learned this from the moment they could understand words. They watched their elders, listened to their mothers, and observed the discipline of their fathers. The walls of Sparta were not built of stone, but of people. Each citizen, hardened by training and sacrifice, stood as part of the city's defense. Their unity was their shield. Even in times of peace, the lessons continued. Boys drilled daily, girls trained their bodies, and families upheld the strict traditions. Spartan pride was quiet but unshakable. From generation to generation, the same customs were passed down. Childhood was the foundation, and the Agoge was the tool that shaped the future. The people believed that only through discipline could Sparta remain strong. Other Greek cities might have looked upon Sparta with curiosity or fear, but no one doubted the strength of its people. The mountains watched silently over the city. The land was hard, the people harder. Yet beneath the strict rules, there was pride. Spartans knew they were different. They knew their upbringing made them ready for any challenge. The stories of Sparta echoed across the ancient world. Songs were sung of their bravery, and enemies whispered their name with fear. But few understood the quiet years of training behind the legends. Every child was part of that story. Boys molded into soldiers, girls shaped into strong mothers. Together they kept the city alive. In Sparta, a child's life was never their own. It belonged to the city. But through that sacrifice came a legacy that endured for centuries. Their names may fade, but their lessons remained. Strength, loyalty, and unity, these were the roots of Sparta's power. The hills, the rivers, the stone streets, all carried the memory of generations raised in hardship. And through their training, the spirit of Sparta lived on. The Agoge was not just training, it was a way to strip away weakness, to replace fear with courage, and to build unity from childhood. Few could endure it, but those who did carried the pride of their ancestors. The world changed, empires rose and fell, but the story of Spartan childhood and training remained. It was carved into history like stone. The reputation of Sparta was built not only on its warriors, but on the way they were raised. Every visitor to Sparta saw a city shaped by discipline and unity. It was different from the grand temples and bustling markets of Athens. In Sparta, there was simplicity, order, and quiet strength. Children were rarely seen idling, boys trained, girls prepared. Even play carried lessons in survival, courage, and obedience. The Spartan way was admired and feared across Greece. Other cities marveled at the discipline of the people, but few could understand the sacrifices behind it. Life in Sparta was not easy, but it created citizens ready for any hardship. The city had few walls. Spartans believed their warriors were the true defense. They carried that belief with pride. Every citizen, from the youngest child to the oldest soldier, contributed to the strength of the city. The system of training, known as the Agoge, remained unchanged for centuries. It became a symbol of what Sparta valued most: endurance, loyalty, and strength. It shaped the daily life of every child born within its borders. Spartan boys and girls knew their lives were part of something greater. They belonged to a city with strict laws, harsh traditions, and unbreakable pride. Their childhoods were forged in the fires of discipline, their futures tied to the fate of their homeland. Even in times of peace, Sparta never relaxed its grip on its people. The lessons of youth followed them into adulthood. Every man, woman, and child understood that they lived not for themselves, but for Sparta. The world beyond the city might change, but within Sparta, the ancient ways endured. Their strength came from unity, their pride from sacrifice, and their legacy from generations of children raised in discipline and honor. The mountains surrounding Sparta stood as silent guardians. The Eurotas River flowed steadily, nourishing the land and reminding the people of their connection to the earth. From birth to adulthood, every Spartan carried the weight of tradition. They learned to speak with few words, to act with purpose, and to accept suffering as a part of life. The world knew Sparta for its warriors, but the foundation was laid in the cradle. Boys and girls grew under the same expectations: to be strong, proud, and ready to serve. Their homes were simple, their lives were structured. Joy was found in achievement, in endurance, in honor. Even the youngest child understood the meaning of duty. The elders told stories of past battles, of heroes who gave their lives for the city. These tales were not only history, but lessons. They taught the children that to live for Sparta was the highest calling. Families took pride in their sons' strength, in their daughters' resilience. Mothers were respected for raising warriors. Fathers were measured by the bravery of their children. In every corner of Spartan life, the values of endurance, unity, and sacrifice were clear. As young Spartans grew older, their training never stopped. The Agoge shaped every year of their youth. It was more than education. It was a lifelong preparation for war, duty, and discipline. By their late teens, Spartan boys had endured years of hardship. They had learned to fight, to survive, to obey. Now came the final tests of their readiness. They would soon leave the Agoge and take their place among the citizen soldiers of Sparta. But even at this stage, they were not yet equals. They were known as young men, still proving themselves worthy of full Spartan status. They trained with the army, served the city, and continued to live under strict rules. They learned to work together as a phalanx, the tight military formation that made Sparta feared across Greece. Discipline was everything. Each man relied on the one beside him. Their shields overlapped. Their steps moved as one. Their hearts beat with the same rhythm. Failure to hold the line meant disgrace, not only for the soldier but for his family. Victory was not measured by individual bravery, but by unity. The Spartans were not a collection of warriors. They were a single, unbreakable force. Meanwhile, Spartan women carried their own responsibilities. They managed the household, oversaw land, and ensured the family remained strong in the absence of men. Their independence set them apart from other Greek women. Physical strength was still prized. Women continued to train, run, and compete. A healthy body was seen as essential for motherhood. Their role was vital. They raised the next generation of Spartans, teaching them pride, honor, and discipline. Spartan society left little room for weakness. Every citizen was expected to give everything to the city. From birth to adulthood, every lesson, every challenge prepared them for that life. The final step for young men was joining the mess groups, or syssitia. These were communal dining groups made up of Spartan soldiers. Eating together was more than sharing food. It was a sign of belonging. Acceptance into a mess group was a mark of true adulthood. It was where loyalty was tested, friendships were forged, and strategies were discussed. To be excluded meant social isolation and disgrace. The young men ate simple meals together. Black broth, bread, and meat were common. The focus was never on comfort, but on unity and survival. Those who proved themselves in the mess groups earned full citizenship. They became known as Spartiates, true Spartans with the right to vote, to own land, and to fight for their city. Yet even then, the duty never ended. Spartan men were expected to remain ready for war until the age of 60. Their bodies, minds, and loyalty belonged to Sparta until their final day. As they approached their teenage years, Spartan boys faced even greater trials. The Agoge became more demanding. Physical strength was not enough. They had to prove their intelligence, discipline, and ability to survive with little. One of the harshest traditions was known as the crypteia. It was a secret rite of passage, reserved for the most promising youths. Those selected were sent into the countryside, alone, with only a knife. They were expected to survive by stealth, hunting, and fear. During the crypteia, these young Spartans would move silently through the shadows. They observed the helots, the enslaved population who worked the Spartan lands. The boys were expected to intimidate them, keep them in fear, and if necessary, eliminate threats to the state. This brutal practice was not just a test of survival, but a lesson in control and obedience. It reinforced the hierarchy of Spartan society. It taught young men that their duty to Sparta outweighed all else. Failure during the crypteia was unthinkable. Success meant joining the ranks of the most respected warriors. Meanwhile, the girls of Sparta continued to train their bodies and minds. Their education included music, poetry, and physical challenges. They learned to run, to wrestle, and to defend themselves. Spartan women were admired throughout Greece for their strength and independence. Marriage came later than in other cities. Spartan women often married in their late teens or early 20s, after they had developed strength and maturity. The belief was simple: strong women would raise strong sons. These customs ensured that Sparta remained powerful. Its people were not just citizens, but living symbols of resilience. Childhood and training in Sparta were harsh, but they forged loyalty that endured for life. The ideals of Sparta reached every corner of a child's life. Even their games taught them to be fast, careful, and brave. They competed in races, throwing competitions, and tests of balance. Nothing was without purpose. At festivals, boys and girls demonstrated their skills before the elders. The entire city watched as the next generation displayed their courage and readiness. There was pride in the eyes of the strong, and determination in those still learning. The elders observed carefully. They looked for potential, for weakness, for the spirit of a true Spartan. A child's progress was everyone's concern. The state, the family, the community, all were invested in the making of a warrior or a mother. Those who succeeded brought honor to their families. Those who struggled were not abandoned, but pushed harder, tested further. In Sparta there was no room for giving up. As they neared adulthood, the young Spartans prepared for their final transition. The city demanded much, but in return it gave them identity, purpose, and belonging. Sparta was more than a city. It was a way. By the age of 7, every Spartan boy was taken from his family. His home, his mother's care, all left behind. The city now became his only parent. This was the beginning of the Agoge, the strict and demanding system of education designed to shape boys into warriors. The Agoge was not like any ordinary school. It was harsh. It was relentless. The boys lived together in groups called herds. They shared everything: food, clothing, shelter. They trained every day, learning to fight, wrestle, and survive. Hunger was constant. The boys were underfed on purpose. They were encouraged to steal food but punished severely if caught. Not because stealing was wrong, but because getting caught showed weakness. They walked barefoot across rocky ground. They slept on hard reeds gathered by their own hands. They wore the same cloak all year, through summer heat and winter cold. The instructors were harsh. They taught the boys to endure pain, to conquer fear, to master their own suffering. Only those who could overcome pain would survive the trials ahead. Even friendships were tested. The boys competed constantly, running, fighting, and even singing or reciting poetry. But behind every contest was one goal: to prepare them for life and death as Spartan warriors. Girls, too, were shaped by the ideals of Sparta. Though they stayed at home, their upbringing was far from soft. From a young age, Spartan girls were taught strength, endurance, and pride. They trained their bodies, ran, wrestled, and threw javelins. Their purpose was different from the boys, but equally important. The women of Sparta would become the mothers of warriors. Strong women were believed to bear strong children. In Sparta, women held a status unlike anywhere else in Greece. They were respected for their strength, their spirit, and their role in preserving the Spartan legacy. Mothers were honored, for they gave birth to the future defenders of the city. A famous saying was often spoken by Spartan mothers to their sons: "Come back with your shield, or on it." These words carried deep meaning. It was a reminder that duty to Sparta was above all, to return victorious or to fall in battle with honor. The childhood of both boys and girls in Sparta was built on discipline and sacrifice. From the earliest years, they were prepared to live for the city, to serve its laws, to protect its people. For Spartan boys, life inside the Agoge grew harder as they aged. Each year brought new challenges, more tests, more pain, but also more strength. They learned to hunt, to track, to fight as one. Discipline was everything. Mistakes were punished. Courage was expected. Soon they would face the most brutal trials of all, tests that would prove if they were ready to become true warriors of Sparta. They would face darkness, hunger, and fear. But from that struggle, a Spartan would emerge, hardened, silent, loyal, ready to live, and if needed, ready to die, for the glory of Sparta. Welcome to Timeless History. Let us quietly drift through the forgotten world of the past, to the rugged hills and sunlit valleys of ancient Sparta. Sparta, a land carved by time where the stones remember. a place whispered through the centuries, a place where strength, duty, and honor were not choices, but destiny. Yet beneath the tales of fierce warriors, of shields clashing and spears gleaming beneath the sun, lies another story, the quiet, often hidden story of childhood, of growing up Spartan. A life shaped by the laws of survival, discipline, and sacrifice from the very first breath. In most parts of Greece, a child's birth was a moment of joy, celebration, a family's future written anew. But in Sparta, the arrival of a child was met not only with love, but with scrutiny, with the judgment of the elders. Newborns were brought before them, small, fragile, unaware. But the fate of the child rested in the cold eyes of the council. They inspected every child, searching for strength, for signs of health, for the makings of a future protector of Sparta. If the child showed weakness, frailty, or imperfection, the outcome was merciless. The infant was taken to the slopes of Mount Taygetus. There, exposed to the elements, they faced the will of the gods. Survival was the first test. This practice, harsh as it seems, was seen as essential. For Sparta could not afford weakness. Only the strong, the resilient, the worthy could live to serve the state. Life itself was not given freely. It was earned from the very beginning. Those who survived began their early years under the watchful eyes of their mothers. But even in infancy, their bodies were prepared, hardened, trained to endure. They were bathed in wine, believed to toughen the skin. They slept without blankets, exposed to the cold, the heat, the trials of nature. A Spartan child's world was not one of comfort, but of preparation, a slow, unyielding transformation. For boys, childhood was fleeting, a brief moment before duty called. At the age of 7, they were taken, removed from their homes, their mother's arms, and placed into the care of the state. Their journey had only just begun. The transition was not marked by tenderness. It was abrupt, deliberate, woven into the fabric of Spartan life. Boys were no longer sons. They became property of the city. Their families, their former identities, set aside. The Agoge, the state's great crucible, awaited them. But before that first step, their early years had forged the foundation, one of endurance, silence,